Coming up on Mountain Hermeneutics, does the Bible belong in school? We have some thoughts on that, so keep it right here. You're listening to Mount Hermeneutics, where three Marines give their perspective on God, faith, and spirituality with a heavy lean on the divine council worldview. This is not your grandma's Sunday school, nor is it always for the Christian faint of heart. Nothing about who we are or what we say make us experts. But you better believe we'll have a take, and perhaps it won't suck.
And he told me, I was like in the first or second grade, and he's like, Brian, I know you're going to get into fights at school, but if I find out you threw the first punch, you're going to have more to be afraid of from me than whoever you fought. I took him literally. I thought he meant like you
have to get punched first once.
I got to give that guy like the
upper
first
hand
shot, and then it's fair game until the season.
Irvins have strong jaws, son.
We don't actually.
I probably got because my mother's famous was, listen, if you get in trouble, you get in trouble. But if you lie, you die.
Whoa.
Yeah. She will kill me for
lying.
lying.
You die.
Zed's dead, baby.
Zed's dead. Glad you never lied to your mom, Dre.
Right, never. Because I'd be dead right now. Fellas, what's happening?
What's up?
Happy 4th of July, everybody.
Hey,
America.
I saw a little bit of the West Coast of America last week, driving up to Oregon, to Eugene, Oregon, to watch the Olympic trials, which my son participated in. He made it to the semifinals before he bowed out, and so he will not be going to Paris representing the United States, but
he'll still be going.
He is next month, in a couple weeks, he'll be representing U.S. in a European tour in Venice, Italy, and then the week after that, he'll be running in Luxembourg.
That's cool, man.
Nice.
That is so freaking
fun,
cool.
Fun stuff. We'll see. If
he's gonna have a good time.
You think?
Yeah.
Oh man, don't make me fly to Europe and hang out for a couple of weeks and to run.
Yeah,
my
job is to run fast for 10 seconds.
Good for him, man. That's so awesome.
So fun stuff. But because he bowed out of the 200 meters, we kind of left a little bit early and drove down and went to Mount Shasta. Nice little American landmark there in Northern California.
And was there anything weird going on there?
Well, there is a vortex there, and it's like it's one of those vortex spots. It's also super popular with the crystal crowd, the whole spirituality, New Agers.
It's a big indigenous thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it was a volcano, I think, was what created the mountain.
All kinds of weird sightings of things, and
lots of Bigfoot t-shirts around there.
Well, there's an entity that is known to frequent the area,
and
an entity like Azazel or something.
Yeah,
like an otherworldly human-like entity.
It's pretty Mount Herman-esque. It's up there, man. It's like 9,000 feet.
If I'd known you were going, I would have asked for souvenirs and soil samples and Geiger readings or whatever else we could think of.
Hey, you know what's fun? Being from Southern California, and Matt, you've been here plenty. The tap water in SoCal is horrendous. It's horrendous, but up there in Shasta, like their whole shtick is the cleanest water ever. In fact, I think
actually coming from the mountain.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi password for the little hotel I was at was clean water. One of in the middle of town, there's a big drinking fountain that's like made out of these rocks, and it was an Eagle Scout project. And come drink the water with the water fountain.
Did you taste it?
I did. It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't taste like my filtered water that I paid too much money for. But
right.
You know,
it tastes better than the Camp Pendleton water, though.
Yeah, you remember those canteens, right?
Dude, the water tasted like canteen water coming out of the tap. It's so bad.
Yeah, you can't really blame the canteens.
The canteen was making it better. Like the plastic was giving it a little je ne sais quoi to try to smooth it out.
I don't remember a time when I wasn't just desperately thirsty though, so all water tasted good at the
Right.
time.
Oh,
But I guess living there for years and years might I had a different impression. But
That
do you
water's so
know that
bad.
Solvang, California, is the
I've
Danish
been there.
capital of America?
I've been there. I've been to Solvang,
Okay,
oddly
first of all,
enough.
it's dope AF.
Yes. Yes.
Like
It's all,
it's
it's
like
all,
a village,
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
but it's blocks long. It's not like most like Chinatowns or whatever
I
that's
did
kind
a
of
wine
small.
tasting in Solvang.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
still have my wine glass, I think, in there. That was the first time I
Solvang.
drank red wine, was in Solvang.
So Solvang's
I,
we
I
gotta go
did
back,
a
man.
I gotta tell you a quick story. I think
We're
maybe the
not.
listeners will like this story. So I was in Solvang because I was doing a job on Vandenberg Air Force Base.
Yep.
And so Vandenberg is where Titan II missiles are put together. I think it's Titan IIs, but they make missiles, the big ones, like to put things into space. I guess they're rockets, not missiles, because missile implies it hits and blows up. The rocket just goes
potato,
into space.
tomato,
They make
same thing.
Titan II rockets,
Rockets are basically just like adapted
but
German
they're
World
missiles
War
that don't
II
that don't hit
missiles.
stuff.
On
Right?
my drive, I saw a rocket launch.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was
they launch
like,
them constantly.
what the hell's that? Delani's like, I don't know. It looks like no, that's a rocket.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's a rocket.
So I'm in this one building, and it's they're before I started interviewing these people, because I interview people for what I do. They go, we got to give you a safety brief, and I'm like, okay, cool. Been in lots of government safety briefs, and they're like, this is that. Restrooms are here. Emergency exits are there. If you hear this, that means we've got terrorists in the area. If you hear one loud continuous buzz, that's the fire alarm. If you hear a fire alarm, you find the nearest exit, pick a straight line, and run as fast as you can. And I was like, wait, what? They're like, yeah, we make solid fuel cores in this building. And if there's a fire, may the odds forever be in your favor. Right. And I was just like, that's the craziest safety brief I've ever heard. They're like, yeah, if we catch on fire, like me. The guy looks around the room, because I was like, and he looks around the room, and I was the youngest guy, and I was still in the reserves at the time, the Marine Corps reserves. And he goes, you might make it. Everybody else in here ain't gonna make it out.
Done for.
I'll bet they're probably pretty careful about that though.
I'm sure they are. Yeah. I'm
Ball
positive they're
game.
careful. In fact, at Vandenberg, it was crazy because outside of base, they had like a DMZ painted on the concrete, like around the gates. It was like the protest zone, because they have a lot of protesters come because they make rockets, and people are like, we don't like rockets because reasons. And so people would come and protest. So they drew these protest zones, and people were allowed to stay in that area to protest and picket. But if they came closer, they got the business.
The business.
Menwood Hill had some had protests at the gate very often. I think every Tuesday or every other Tuesday.
Yeah.
Because it is a satellite
Right.
place,
And
right? So
that's what they're doing there, is they're putting satellites into orbit. That's what Vandenberg's doing, is that's what those Titans are doing, is they're launching payloads to put
Space pollution, man.
Yeah.
Space pollution.
It was a cool trip, but Solvang was super cool, man. That region, the central coast of California.
I'm like, man, why do I not know about this place?
Chef's kiss, man. It's so cold up there all the time, and I dig that.
So Morro Bay.
It got the ocean view,
oh man,
but you get to wear a hoodie all the time, and I'm like, I like this.
It was the Central Coast is pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
You go a little bit east from the Central Coast, dog shit.
The whole area where I was driving through was.
I don't mean to offend my friends from Fresno.
It was all like horse farms and stuff.
Yeah.
Like just like big rolling horse farms and vineyards everywhere. Super cool.
Trump signs everywhere.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, whoa.
But you know what they don't have in the Central Coast in their schools is they don't teach Christianity.
So a couple weeks ago, Louisiana started it, right, with the mandatory posting of the 10 Commandments in the classrooms, and then the great state of Oklahoma. Am I saying this right? Oklahoma.
That's how it's pronounced.
Mando Bible teaching, huh?
Yeah, I'm super. So for the listeners, new listeners, welcome, and people that don't know, both Brian and I live in Oklahoma. We live in the two different metropolitan areas, if you want to call them that. Brian's up in the Northeast, and I'm in the Oklahoma City metro. I've yet to hear or see the plan, and what this means, right? Like, I don't know if this is like, are they going to have a whole curriculum? Is it simply going to be talked about? I don't know what the intent is. I'm going to be
Well,
really honest. I have two quick opinions on Ryan Walters. So Ryan Walters is our state superintendent of education. I believe in my heart of hearts, Ryan Walters took this role simply to make a name for himself to run for governor. And I think a lot of this is theater. That's honestly, that's just Matt's personal read, having paid a bit of attention to our local politics in the last couple of years. And I've really been watching this Ryan Walters situation. And I'm not saying that he's not a Christian. I'm saying I don't think he's doing this for the reasons that people think he is. I think this is a setup to a secondary play.
I don't know.
What are some pros and cons to this then?
Well, I think first we need
or do we have a take? We haven't seen a plan, but what do you have an impression of what the plan might be?
Well, he has been interviewed several times, and by the way, just for the listeners, this is all pretty recent and new, so there hasn't been
right.
This happened this happened last Thursday, which of course was the night of the debate, and that's what all the news channels have been talking about.
They didn't want to talk about the debate, I'll tell you that.
And then I mean that's what Friday's news cycle was about, and then weekend it's always just the weekend fluff that they do. So there's been really not a lot of discussion about this. There probably will be by the time this is posted, but so far what he said, like I tried to track down the actual memorandum that he sent out, and I cannot find that. I don't know why that's not more forthcoming on the Oklahoma State Superintendent website, or for all I know, you guys are looking for it and you're gonna make me look dumb.
I am looking for it. Yeah,
it's super easy to find, and I just couldn't. But
I've got it up. I've got it up, Brian. It's a one pager. If you want to let me read it real fast.
Where did you find it?
With his ninja Google skills.
Yeah. NBC News had a link to it in an article. So here, I'll read it real fast. It's super short.
I did think of that, but
effective immediately, all Oklahoma schools are required to incorporate the Bible, which includes the 10 Commandments, as an instructional support into the curriculum across specified grade levels 5 through 12. This directive is in alignment with educational standards approved on or about May 2019, with which all districts must comply. The Bible is one of the most historically significant books and a cornerstone of Western civilization, along with the 10 Commandments. They will be referenced as an appropriate study of history, civilization, ethics, comparative religion, or the like, as well as for their substantial influence on our nation's founders and the foundational principles of our Constitution. This is not merely an educational directive, but a crucial step in ensuring our students grasp the core values and historical context of our country. Additionally, the State Department of Education may supply teaching materials for the Bible as permissible to ensure uniformity in delivery. And then it just talks about adherence is mandatory and adherence is compulsory. Further instructions for monitoring and reporting on this will be forthcoming. Immediate and strict compliance is expected. End of transmission.
Which means in the fall when school's
right. Yeah, because it's obviously summer.
Right. Now he's been interviewed several times about this, and he's reiterated that this is not religious indoctrination.
Religion per se.
Right. This is about the Bible as
as a historical document.
The historical role of the Bible in the founding of the country and Western civilization, all the things. And I would say that, as stated, like as far as what that says on paper and what he has said in interviews, I think that's absolutely right on. And I'd be saying the same thing if I was a militant atheist. If you're going into the world without,
hang on.
Let me finish my point. I would say the same thing if I was I want to reiterate, according to what's on paper and according to what he said in interviews, 100% on board if I was a militant atheist. Because if you're going into the world without the awareness of the importance of the Bible as an influence on history, you're simply not prepared for the real world. That's just a fact. Now, I think there's more to it than what's on paper. So then that might be what you were about
No,
to.
no, what I was going to say is,
Your
in
atheist
fairness,
comment.
a militant atheist would be a liar. And so I
Mhm.
don't believe you that you would say the same thing if you're a militant atheist, because you wouldn't be honest and you wouldn't argue it. You wouldn't come to this conversation with in good faith, because I don't believe atheists do, not militant atheists.
Well,
So
Richard
we have a
Richard
couple of
Dawkins.
listeners. Hang on, we
I
have a
think
couple of
Richard Dawkins would
listeners.
agree with me.
We have a couple of listeners that are atheists, but I don't consider them to be militant. So you know who you are out there. I forgot your screen names, but we've seen your conversations and we respect those. And I believe that you've come to the conversation in good faith. So,
Well, Richard Dawkins has identified himself as a cultural Christian and acknowledges the social utility of Christianity.
right, and I don't believe a cultural Christian is not a militant atheist. Is my point.
Right.
I don't know that there's a more militant atheist than Richard Dawkins.
Maybe we haven't defined militant properly.
Right. Like that's the whole point of the militant atheist, the people that are like, shut up, shut your mouth, don't talk about the Bible, stop referencing it.
Yeah, there are those, but
church and state.
Let me revise that. A militant atheist who is not a complete, well, let me be nice. A militant atheist who is not historically aware. But yeah, just my only point is, I don't want to get off on a rabbit trail about what militant means, but my point is, like, I'm not saying that as, it's not any secret. I'm a sincere and devoted Christian, but I'm not saying that as a Christian. I'm saying that without regard for whether or not Christianity is true. The fact of the matter is, the importance of the Bible in informing our understanding of history cannot be overstated. And if you're going, and I will say that when I did become a Christian and I read the Bible and I got through it a couple of times, I wanted to see how the story continued, which got me reading church history, Jewish history, Roman history, Western history. I kind of found myself getting mad at my public school teachers because they had to have tried to make it all so boring. History is actually really exciting, but it seemed like they were kind of doing it with they were only giving you like selective portions of it. They cut out any reference to religion, I guess, because they didn't want to get sued, which means cutting out any appeal to human motivation. Why were people doing things? What were their beliefs that made them behave the way they did, that drove the events of history? They didn't get into all that because they didn't want to get into religion, because you can't really talk about human motivation and human history without that factor.
I don't think that second part's true, Brian. So without getting into too much of a rabbit hole, my senior year in high school, I had one of my favorite teachers. It was AP World History. And the teacher was a Orthodox priest in his day job, quote unquote, right? Okay. And he taught every single class from the perspective of religion. He basically explained that almost every major event that happened in human history happened through the lens or because of or as a result of religion. It wasn't always Christianity, right? It was this, that, and the other thing. This is the guy that taught me about Saint Nick at the Nicene Convention and the fisticuffs. Like, I learned that in high school, public schools. Like, this guy was awesome.
Right. But do you think that your experience was typical or exceptional?
Well, it wasn't typical because it was AP history to start with, and it was in Oklahoma, right? Like, but my point is, he wasn't getting sued over it, is what I'm trying to get at. Well, I think the reality is that most teachers lack the actual understanding themselves about what causes things, and so they end up with a whitewashed view, and then teachers end up reteaching a whitewashed view.
I think the word that jumped off the page as you were reading that was the word reference. Like, we've been so militant toward religion that, like, teachers can't have a Bible on their desk. You can't mention Jesus without somebody having a conniption, when that stuff is all part of what education is. So If you like, hey, why did people act like that during the Spanish Inquisition? Well, because the Bible says this, and those people believe that. Whether they were faithfully following the Bible or not is not the point, right? We're not
Right.
talking about dogma. We're talking about historical events.
I think it's a good point. I think
It's
actually
so
it's
it's a reference. If the Quran needs to be referenced because of a war that happened during the Crusades, then the Quran should be referenced.
Yeah.
If some kind of thing in history in ancient China, because you're taking an Asian studies course, right? Then we should talk about Eastern religions as a part of why that goes on, because religion is really a part of life. So, and it's a part of history. And it's not about pitching it or making your students confess the birth and resurrection and death of Jesus Christ, right? That's not what it's about. But if people did significant events set around those events that happened, then you should probably know what they are and why.
I think it's a great point. I think it's funny. I didn't think to look up the memo. I was looking for, I've been watching the news, expecting to see
Sure.
it kind of pushed in front of me. I've been kind of lazy about this, despite the fact that we knew we were going to have this show. Reading that short memo, and to Brian's point, if I'm to take Superintendent Walter's words at face value, I think it's kind of hard to argue with it. I think I would go a step further, Dre, exactly as you said. Why does it stop at just the Bible, right? Why wouldn't you say, all major religious material should be considered referenceable for the purposes of teaching and using as a backstop for, human history and the
Well,
events
yes, and I think
of humankind.
I think he was going toward American history more because it is more significant in the founding of the country,
That's fair.
or
It
just
does say Western
in Western
civilization.
Well,
That's,
civilization
you know what, you're
period,
right.
right?
That's
Yeah.
fair. That's fair. He
So,
does say Western
and that's not to
civilization.
say
But
that
the-
other things don't matter, and if it's a relevant class, but as far as teaching Western civilization and American history, you can't do it without Christianity. You just can't
But
properly, anyway.
it's interesting that we went here though, because in most of the coverage that I've seen of this, I haven't been able to find much in the way of conservative responses to it. I kind of know, I think I have a certain range of expectations for what those are going to be, but most of it has been the mainstream media decrying this as imposing religion, like the Tulsa World
Right.
article. They after they covered what the memorandum was, they talked to all these other religious representatives, and there was a Hindu guy and a Jewish guy, and the Hindu guy's like, yeah, this is fine as long as they teach the Bhagavad Gita alongside that. And it was, which is kind of exasperating, because they just kind of blow right past what his stated reason for doing this is, which is the Bible occupies a unique place in Western history. We're a Western country. We weren't founded on the Bhagavad Gita or the Quran.
Right.
Now, back when I was a state capitol reporter, I socialized with some state lawmakers from time to time, and I would always pitch this, that like I think we ought to have a mandatory world religion curriculum. Like, people ought to be aware of what's in the Quran and what's in the Vedas and the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, and they ought to be aware of where Christianity stands with among all these other religions. And I was always kind of shot down. Like, everybody kind of told me what a bad idea that was, because we can't indoctrinate people into other religions besides Christianity. I was continually struck by the common theme in the coverage I've seen of this kind of echoes my experience at the time, is that people, they don't seem to make a distinction between religious indoctrination and just teaching about a religion. Like, all the coverage of this presupposes, like, they don't even address what he says about his stated reason. They just presuppose this is about indoctrination. This is about pushing Christianity. This is about him abusing his power to impose his values and his beliefs on the school children of Oklahoma. And it's a part of me, I'm kind of mad at him for that, because they're just kind of bypassing his stated reason. They're just not even like attempting to address that on its merits. But at the same time, I watched the Fox News coverage of this. A representative from the Oklahoma State Superintendent Committee went on Fox and Friends to kind of be the spokesman for this. It's a Catholic priest. He was wearing his collar. He was addressed as Father so and so, and it's just like watching that. I can kind of like, okay, I can see why somebody might think this is about indoctrination.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hope it's not. I feel like there's going to be a lot of conservatives and Christians celebrating it because they think it is.
Right. That's certainly, I've already seen it firsthand. Like I've
Yeah.
experienced it in my local circles.
Yeah.
And that's concerning to me because, it's no secret on the show that we talk about how Christianity in particular is taught wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're just going to let any Tom, Dick, and Harry school teacher read from the Bible and interpret it to kids, what could be out there that's very incorrect?
Right. If educated, trained, professional pastors get it wrong.
Right. Yeah.
Well, how wrong is Mrs. Johnson from Sixth Hour gonna get it wrong?
Right. And does it stop there, right? So, what about, the biology teacher or, the earth sciences or
one of our listeners,
not just history.
One of our listeners who actually asked me about this before we'd even decided to do this topic, shared an anecdote of flashback to when my son was little. We went to a different church, and one morning he told me his Sunday school teacher taught them they knew the Bible was true because all men have one less rib than women. I say, which is obviously not true. Men don't have one less rib than women. But if this is the kind of thing that people are going to teach, he hasn't specified what teach the Bible means in terms of specific curriculum, but it raises issues about it. You go to a class to be taught something, the assumption is you're being taught by a subject matter expert. So, this might not go the way Christians think it will. The ones who are celebrating this.
Yeah, I think that's true. I'm rereading this sentence that I think is important. And Dre, you mentioned it, the referenced term, right? And it says they will be referenced as an appropriate study of history, civilization, ethics, comparative religion, or the like, as well as for their substantial influence on our nation's founders and the foundational principles of our Constitution, period. There's nothing.
I think that's a great sentence.
There's nothing arguable with that sentence, right? Like, I mean, to go from backwards to frontwards, right? It's no secret that the founding fathers of the United States were largely Christian. I understand not all of them were, right?
Sure.
We know that there's a couple of nuances there, but there's the quote about, the only way this democracy experiment works is if the people are of, upright moral and Christian values, et cetera, et cetera. And to use it as a comparative study against other religions, ethics, civilization, and history, like, how do you say that it has no place in those conversations? Like,
right.
So, Brian, to your point, I think you're dead on right there. If it's handled academically, the question really is, why does this have to be issued as a memorandum? That's really, that's really a different, that's the more important question here, is why does it take a firebrand, superintendent of education to make this a conversation? Because it should just be happening by natural occurrence. It should be an organic thing that just occurs.
My initial take a couple weeks ago when Louisiana had his thing about the 10 Commandments was that this is a reaction from the conservative right for all the things that's taught in school, right? It's like a overcorrection.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they're gonna teach all the theories, the gender theory, fat theory, race theory, all the critical theories, if you will, if that's going to be a
leftist
thing,
dogma,
yes, then we're gonna enter our thing. When and that's kind of how I took it. I'm like, well, I mean, I guess that's not a terrible thing, but at the same time, stop playing defense and just go be proper. But by hearing that sentence, it seems like it's just like, hey, stop cutting this out. This is relevant, and this should be here, and it's what an education should be about. Because when I saw a segment of the Young Turks, and they talked about, well, how come they're just not teaching math and history and don't and then of course Mr. Yeager he starts reading passages from Hosea about killing children and whatnot. So all the problems with evil issues, the objections from the Bible, and we're just going to let teachers read from the Bible. What about this passage? Well, what about this passage? But if you read that sentence that Matt talked about ethics
Yeah.
and
And he kind of illustrated why we need to teach the Bible in public schools, because he doesn't know anything about it. Like you have opinion leaders like Cenk Uygur, God help us. This is his take on it. He has no idea what it is, or he reads something like that. He thinks every line of the Bible is prescriptive, not merely descriptive of what people thought and did. And that's the kind of thing that people need to be taught. But at the same time, like, going back to the leftist dogma, you can mandate that we teach the Bible in public schools, but what if he had mandated that gay history must be taught? Would there be the same kind of outcry? Would there be teachers who are up in arms about that? It seems like a lot of them were doing that anyway, without being directed to. They took it upon themselves. But like, if you have a workforce of teachers who are themselves indoctrinated into being antagonistic to the Bible and to teaching things that are contrary to the Bible, I mean, you can mandate, hey, you're going to teach the Bible from now on. You can't mandate that they like it or that they do it respectfully, that they don't do it with a sneer every time that comes up, and it's not going to have the effect that you want. You're going to have teachers basically teaching their contempt for the Bible to their students. And so I like the mandate on paper. I just don't think I think it's a symbolic move. I don't think it's going to have the effect that we want.
It's interesting because I think the way you say that, I think we're closer to the same page. I was a little more antagonistic in my read of it, right? So Dre, what you don't know and the listeners won't know is Ryan Walters has already created a shitstorm in Oklahoma ever since he took office. So from the day he took office as the state education superintendent, the teachers union has been trying to get him thrown out and recalled. So basically his whole platform was Oklahoma schools are becoming woke and I'm going to put an end to it because no one else has the balls to do it. So he's been that guy since the day he was elected, which is why I made the comment about him running for governor. I wasn't being hateful. Our Governor Stitt, is done. He's a 2-term governor, so he can't run again. So we're going to have a new Republican candidate, and I think it's going to be Ryan Walters is going to be the front runner for it because he's made such a name for himself with the far right, the evangelicals, the constitutionalists, et cetera, right? And this is just more of him saying, I'm that guy. I'm him, right? And in a state like Oklahoma, they elect him.
Right.
That's
Sure.
the guy that gets
Sure.
elected to be governor,
Sure.
is the guy that's going to carry the torch. So I might be being a little uncharitable with saying it's just a play, but this certainly, he's not thinking about his governorship run.
I think it can be a play, and he's sincere.
That's what I just said. It can be both.
Yeah.
But he definitely did not have the governor's mansion in mind when he issued this memo.
And I absolutely 100% agree with his stated objectives. But I think he's trying to.
To me, it comes off as pandering, is my point. And I think you've said kind of the same thing. You're being more charitable than I am.
Well, pandering is where you don't really believe what you're doing. You're just kind of chasing the approval.
I believe he believes in this as much as Trump really believes in America first when it comes to taking care of the average Joe American worker, because I don't think Trump believes in that. I think when Trump says America first, he means economically at the top level, top down, not bottom up. But the average American hears America first and they think from bottom up. And I think Ryan Walters is similar in this regard.
Yeah, I think a lot of Americans think not America first, but Americans first. Right.
Well,
and I think there's the difference.
I agree with that.
I don't have any opinions on Ryan Walters' internal motivations. But I will say that he's offering a political solution to something that is ultimately not a political problem. It's
or it shouldn't be anyway, right?
It is a political problem, I think, because you say the word Jesus in school and people lose their damn mind.
Yeah.
Well,
all these lawsuits start popping up, and if you make it law that you will reference the Bible when appropriate, then those lawsuits can go away. Of course, there'll be more upfront trying to fight the law
at him, but not at the individual teachers. Yeah.
Well, politics is downstream from culture. Culture is downstream from religion, and I think that you can't make up the difference in public schools for the failures of the church to teach the Bible.
Sure, but you can protect individual teachers.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, and I don't. It's not that I'm against what he's doing. I'm just saying what he's doing. My concern is that conservatives are going to be like, "Hey, look, we're winning. Look what our guy did."
Further, yeah.
And we make the same mistake that leftists do in thinking that government is supposed to be the center of public life and the arbiter of values and beliefs, and it's really not. It's just supposed to protect our individual liberties to determine those on our own. But it's, you know, if the people that you're giving the mandate to don't believe in it, it's just going to backfire. And you're all the people who are complaining that this is the Handmaid's Tale. This is government interference in religion and trying to impose their values on us and turning us into a Christian nationalist country. Well, he's just kind of, again, I don't think this is necessarily a reason not to do it, but it's going to throw fuel on that fire. And the main problem, and not that I expect Ryan Walters to fix the main problem. I'm more addressing this to the Christians who might be celebrating this as a victory. It's really not. And if it is, it's short term, and it might cost more in the long run. So.
Now I do, according to that memo, anyway, like it more than Louisiana's mandatory posting of the Ten Commandments. I mean,
the Louisiana thing is far more just symbolic.
You're making them like they must post the Ten Commandments. It's one thing to reference the Ten Commandments when we were like, hey, teacher, where do you think the morality comes from? Well, it comes from right here. It's the Western way of knowing it. But to say that poster on the wall, you must. That to me, that's a problem.
Well, so I agree. I go a step. I don't know if it's a step further, but I have this question to ask. Maybe, I don't know if it's a question. Let me just vomit what I want to say and see how I turn this into a conversation point. People I've heard many times, specifically from the boomer generation, and I'm not using that disparagingly, I'm being genuine with the time stamps of who I'm talking about, have been like, I've heard people say things like, well, they're trying to take one nation under God out of the Pledge of Allegiance, and they're trying to take, God off of our money. And when I say what's only been there since the 1950s, I'm usually met with confusion, right? Like it wasn't there
from
before.
The Cold War.
They didn't start the fire, Matt.
Exactly.
I agree with you. Those particular symbolic features weren't there until then, but the overall, fabric of God in public life and as being referenced in government, that's been there from the beginning. I mean, the Bible was the textbook in public schools up until the 20th century. that's just that, you know, whatever the framers thought
It
that the
wasn't
First
just the
Amendment
Bible;
meant.
it was the King James Bible.
Yeah, and it was
That's the
actually,
only translation.
I think it was in 1890 in Wisconsin. There,
You won't
like
tread on me.
one of
Got
the, and this
38
is
in
in,
one hand, Bible in the other.
this is you know, this is in the Wikipedia article about prayer in public school. Yeah, it was the King James Bible was the main textbook until we got a lot of we got a lot of Catholic immigrants, and then a lot of other immigrants, and there was disputes arose about how public education was handled. One of the major cases was in Wisconsin. A Catholic family complained that the King James Bible it wasn't the correct version, and it's the Catholic version. I
Because it
forget,
didn't
it's,
have all the extra Catholic books in it.
well, because it relied on I think because it relied on the Masoretic text, and the Catholic version was based on the Vulgate. And there's some merit to that particular argument, but it's also you know, from a manuscript standpoint, but that's not what we're talking about. But the point is, the more pluralized we got, the less people could agree on these things, and it just became so problematic that we stopped. You know, people objected to it on First Amendment grounds, but clearly the First Amendment didn't stop them from doing it to begin with, and nobody thought that's what the First Amendment meant when it was drafted and ratified, because they were all teaching from the Bible as the main textbook, and all of the other textbooks, like the McGuffey Readers, was a major fixture in public education. They use biblical examples to teach the alphabet and math, and I mean the way that people use critical race theory today to teach math problems. You know that how they in like a word problem they'll reference like underprivileged minorities, and you know that this person had this much for a scholarship but was denied because of his race, and this person had this much, and how much of this person had left. Like the whole point of it is to kind of convey these leftist values while they teach you math. Well, they did the same thing with the Bible back in the day. Like it was infused into everything. So it's more like the practical difficulties of doing that arose as we became more pluralized, and then people kind of appealed to the First Amendment as a post hoc justification to stop doing it. But it's totally not what the First Amendment meant when it was framed. That's all I was getting at. But
That's fair. What? So, I mean, sounds like we're all in which odd that this happens when we're actually all in agreement.
I know we need to
I'm trying to figure out a way to drive an argument into this, because I expected this to be somewhat more hotly contested, at least in some direction. I think sadly reading the memo kind of clarified things to where it was like,
I know we could have just speculated and been angry for no reason.
well, shit, Negro, that's all you had to say. So, but I mean, I think is it fair to say as a summation that we collectively agree that at face value, as written, Ryan Walters' situation with Oklahoma seems fine, seems appropriate, seems, kind of meh. Whereas do we all three agree that what's going on in Louisiana probably gets more into the church and state separation and is problematic from an actual Christian point of view?
No, I think it's an identical issue. I mean, I think it has less impact than what Ryan Walters is doing. I think it's purely symbolic. And I think a lot of it is like I think you already said this, Matt. Turnaround is fair play. If leftist activists can teach LGBTQ ideology in public schools,
that was me, Brian.
Sorry.
Whatever.
Sorry, Dre. I figured Matt was the most likely to argue with what I was about to say, so I figured I'd butter him up. But what the hell was I going to say? Oh yeah, turnaround is fair play. It's just if they can do it, we can do it. Now let's see you argue. And then, I mean, this might just be like a backdoor ploy, no pun intended, to get the LGBTQ stuff out of the out of schools. Edit that joke out. You'll have to get rid of that late in
So
the
so
post.
actually, guys, I'm gonna throw. I don't know. Let me change this. I'm gonna read the actual Senate floor bill for Louisiana.
Okay.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we should have done this. So these are amendments. So this isn't the final, but this gets us close enough. I'm not going to spend all day searching. I'm not Jamie. Amendment number 1 says to change from relative after relative insert public. So you'll understand when I read this. So basically this is open for the state. So every county and city can change it. It says after schools, delete the rest of the line and insert. So the point of this is to provide for the display of certain historical documents, to provide for the display of the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, the Northwest Ordinance, and the Ten Commandments. So this is also a broader conversation, right?
Yeah. Well, the headlines only said 10
Yeah,
Commandments.
I know. That's why I just pulled it up. So it says blah blah blah, regular session provided for Secretary of State.
Stuff like that's why I'm mad all the time. Stuff like that. Like they lie. The media, they just lie. They lie and they lie and they keep lying and then they lie more.
Do I owe a Louisiana apology now?
I don't know. Now,
Now,
I can't read this because these are all the amendments. I need the actual bill.
I do think that was kind of a ploy to kind of like head off at the pass, like any objections on religious grounds. No, it's historical, like all this other stuff. But at the same time, the news coverage should cover that. They just homed in on the 10 Commandments as if it was all on its own. But anyway.
Okay, I found the actual House bill. So it's a little bit longer. So let me scan through this real quick.
While you're doing that, for people at home, in case I'm visibly sweating, my house is a sauna right now. I lost power last night and the power came back on 3 hours later, and my AC hasn't worked since. So it's been uncomfortable.
Our thoughts and prayers are with you, Brian.
Thank you.
My California coast thoughts and prayers are, I don't even have AC because I don't need it, but I can understand how you could be uncomfortable, maybe. When I just have to go outside and let the wind blow through my non-hair. So I'm sorry, man. That sucks. No AC.
Thanks, man.
Yes.
Okay, so I can't read this article. I'll post. Let me grab a copy of this, and I'm going to post this link. I'm going to post both links, this and the memo from Brian Walters, just so our readers can read exactly on their own instead of my verbalization of it. This one's a little bit longer. It starts off with talking about the 10 Commandments, and then for clarity purposes, the bill actually restates the 10 Commandments to say which version, basically, like this is the language you're going to use. They give a suspense date of January 1st, 2025. Then it goes on to say the 10 Commandments were included in public school textbooks published by educator William McGuffey. Blah, blah, blah. The 10 Commandments also appeared in textbooks by Noah Webster back in 1975. A public school may also display the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, Northwest Ordinance, as provided in RS 25-1282, along with the 10 Commandments.
So that's may provide, not must.
But it's must on the 10 Commandments.
Okay.
And it says the text of the 10 Commandments shall be the central focus of the poster or framed document and shall be printed in a large, easily readable format.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, I don't know that there's any wiggle room on this one. This one does feel a little more direct.
Any wiggle room with regard to what? The
intent, or whether it was a combination of multiple things. So no, Dre, I don't think you owe Louisiana an apology.
So I'm not Christian, and I go to school in Louisiana, and and there's a poster on the wall telling me how I'm sinning because I don't, because what's the first commandment?
You shall have no other God before me.
Right. So is is that okay to put in a public school? Not
Um,
okay. Is it proper? Is it right? Is it what Christians should do?
I think it's defensible from a legal historical standpoint, but at the same time, I think it's
I don't. I don't think it's defensible. I think referencing it is a lot different than mandating it. And again, we had the same points. You start mandating things to people that have, you know, ill feelings toward this. Are they going to teach it properly, or are they going to come in and mention it and talk about how much bullcrap that is? That number one, the first commandment is, right? Like you, you open the door for teachers
yeah.
to funnel ideas. And
I mean that's a practical. I mean that's a legitimate practical objection. But as far as the legal and historical justification for it, I think that's fine. I mean it like the Ten Commandments, just like the Bible, they're a part of the Bible. They're they're the basis for
so
English common law and
why not
American.
make the Bible required reading in school?
You mean in Louisiana,
Yeah,
or
yeah. Louis, why not make the why just the Ten Commandments then?
maybe that's coming up, or maybe
Yeah.
that's but I mean I
And
agree that's a good
because
idea, but as far as
because then it's almost as if they're saying it's a required belief as well. This
I
is a
don't think
required
that's
belief.
I don't think that's true. I think it's just a just it's I mean you can't mandate belief. I mean how do you even do that? But it is it's acknowledging this is the foundation of our civilization. Like it or not, agree with it or not, that's the fact of the matter. Um, you don't have to like it, you don't have to agree with it, but that is, I mean, any more than you have to like or agree with the Constitution. Um,
I would offer this thought with it. This is, I mean, this is kind of how I always think about things.
Saying the Pledge of
Do
Allegiance isn't mandatory.
do we believe? Do we
and
think?
You can opt out of
yeah,
the Pledge of Allegiance.
and I agree that you should be able to. But what were you saying, Matt?
I was just, do we think there's any logical, realistic belief that any individual child will understand or be brought to God simply because of having the Ten Commandments up in its school classroom?
Um,
If the answer to that, and to me, the answer doesn't matter. Like this is what I'm trying to get at as a second part to my question. If the answer is yes, then I think, Dre, it's defensible if you're a Christian. Because if a person is a Christian, there is no thing that should be off the table if it can bring someone to God. If it can further the kingdom of God, it's defensible as a Christian.
Okay.
If the answer is no, this does nothing other than stick your finger in the eye of non-Christians.
I do think there's some of that. I do think it's largely like while it is defensible, I would say it's unassailable from a legal historical standpoint. Ultimately, yeah, it seems like it's a symbolic victory. And the entire point of the new covenant over as opposed to the old covenant is salvation by grace through faith, not by the works of the law. Law, of course, being coercion by government force. That's how the covenant of Moses worked. That they uh, in in Israel under the Mosaic covenant, a sin is a crime is a sin. There's one and the same. They were a theonomy. Obedience to the law was mandatory, regardless of whether you believed in it. There was no, to opt out of the law is to opt out of being a member of Israel. The entire point of salvation by grace through faith, not by the works of the law, is that you do this because you believe it, because you believe in it for its own sake. You love and trust the one who commanded it, so you obey because that's who you are, because that's its own reward. You can't mandate belief. You can't make people believe when they don't. You can persuade them if they're willing to listen, but you can't mandate it against their will. And I'm kind of concerned that so many Christians are so focused on the cultural war, and these really kind of petty symbolic victories. We take it as a shortcut to the real war. Like we think we've accomplished something. Like we'll cheer stuff like this on, but we don't make any attempt to reform the church, to get the church operational, so that the people within the church believe and have a firm foundation in apologetics and truth and biblical knowledge. Instead, we kind of settle for these cultural victories. And now I do think there's value in kids growing up in an environment where they see the 10 Commandments on display and understand this is an important fixture of the world I live in and the country I live in. Who is this God that I'm supposed to believe in? And maybe they'll ask questions. Maybe down the line, this will bring results. But that, I think that by itself is going to do very little if they don't have a functional, healthy church to go to. I mean, it seems like if the church fixed itself, all of this stuff would take care of itself. Let them. I think we should just, frankly, I think we should abolish public education and just let the leftists teach their kids how they want, and let the conservatives teach our kids how we want, and get the government out of it entirely, at least at the federal level.
At the federal level, 100%.
I mean, that's absolutely anyway, but maybe even at the state level, if it's all of this stuff started happening before there was a Department of Education. I think, and this whole debate raises still deeper, more fundamental questions about, well, what is the purpose of education? Because it seems like we have all of these cultural battles over control of it, where there's not really any agreement about what it's for. It's just kind of assumed that it's there to be the vehicle for imposing our values, whatever they are, whether you're on the right or the left. And it's supposed to be a shared, cooperative community institution. Instead, it's kind of a battleground for these ideologies. And I think in Oklahoma, we're 49th in the country for public education. So,
yep. And we're either first or second in incarceration rates.
Yeah.
Well, if you just add the Bible in that, you're gonna rocket to number one. I mean, hello.
What if we do?
I do think it's a step in the right direction, but again, that step by itself has very, very little impact. So, but I think I've said everything I have to say about this.
Yeah. So,
you guys,
in closing, Louisiana, you suck. Ryan Walters, I might have been wrong about you. We'll see.
I don't agree with.
Yeah, well,
I disavow his statement about Louisiana.
Oh, Louisiana sucking. I just think they're wrong. I just think it's unnecessary. Just teach your kids, and like where are parents at? Right. And I understand, Louisiana and Oklahoma are on the bottom of national education.
Yeah.
So
New Mexico is doing worse than us.
Maybe they should do something like
take that, Monty Singer.
Teach people to read. How about that? So maybe if they read the 10 Commandments out loud every day, maybe that could help. just being able to just read. I mean, phonics, right? Just do it.
Did you say phonics or ebonics?
Phonics.
Phonics.
They're what you get hooked on to learn how to read.
You get hooked on ebonics also.
It is fun, yeah. All right.
We solved
it.
Bible in schools.
I know your brother John loves when we say we solve something. He's
I
in
mean,
a
we
grip in
we
his
at least
steering wheel
actually
right
brought this one to a conclusion.
now. Yeah, at least, at least. So,
Oh, you know
yep.
what? I'm surprised this didn't come up. So what about putting up Baphomet statues? Do you think those are as legitimate as Ten Commandment statues?
It's not Ten
You know,
Commandment statue. It's just a
No,
picture,
no, I
well,
know.
right?
monument, whatever.
It's
But
yeah,
I don't because it's legitimately trolling.
it's a fake religion.
It's a fake religion with
Premised on
sole
trolling
purpose to say
Christians.
that all
Yeah.
religions are dumb, right? Like
so what is the legal argument you would make for them to not be able to do that?
to not be able I think
Yeah.
well, as
Anti-troll
part of
law.
education or just part of like a private thing or
Well, I mean, in I think it was in Iowa where they had the Ten Commandments on display at the Iowa State Capitol, and so the Temple of Satan or the church, one of those
Yeah.
right.
goofy Dungeons and Dragons clubs, put up
And that one dude came and decapitated it. Is that what it
right,
is?
Yeah. He
right,
got arrested.
but
He got
Not
locked
all
up.
heroes wear capes, right? Like
yeah, but they were able to put that up there because they're the state, you know, the state government couldn't come up with a legal
No,
reason
we
they
so we
couldn't
talked
do
about
it.
this. We
We
covered this
did.
when it happened, right? And if I remember right, our final opinion was that they didn't technically meet the laws of a organized religion because they didn't have all of there was a lot of federal criteria around what it takes to be a religion.
Now, according to the IRS, they are a religion.
According to that, but it's not. But it's a tenuous agreement, right? Because they don't have a formalized.
But at the same
doctrine and all the
time,
other stuff.
well, but that's the problem is Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion. The consequence of that is that Congress has made no law defining a religion.
But that doesn't mean a state can't, because of the 10th.
Huh?
Just
Did the
because
state of
Congress
Iowa
decided they wouldn't, it doesn't mean the state can't.
I'm not sure that that follows, since
I'm thinking states might now that Iowa has been like, damn it, loophole.
Here's
Which
what I think
the Satanists
states
are really good at finding the religious
They are.
loopholes.
They are. I think they're a bunch of attorneys, and that tracks, by the way.
Here's what I think states should do to deal with this kind of a situation. What bugs me is that it's always some out of state group that comes in and decides they don't like the way Iowa or Oklahoma is doing our business and deciding to set us straight when they don't even have a stake. I think that to get a monument put up at the state capitol or on public land, you need to have a member of the state legislature sponsor you. And if you can find
Good
a
luck
state
getting reelected is your point. Yeah.
exactly, if you can find a state senator who will sponsor your statue of Baphomet, go to town and you know, if it stays up, if that senator stays in office and that thing stays up, well, then I guess that
The people have spoken.
I guess that that district is okay with it, and that represents that district, and so then it's right to be there. Then they should
like
have
that.
their statue of Baphomet.
Civically, I like that. I think that makes sense.
That's how republics are supposed to work.
And that would assure that one would never be in the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't know, man.
Or you should at least
times they are a changing.
like your whole group should have like residency in your state minimum before they even request a sponsorship. Like a bunch of people from California just can't go to Oklahoma and demand stuff.
Yeah. Well, having a member of the state legislature sponsor you would get around that. The first thing, the first questions they're going to ask is going to be, "Are you in my district?" Well, no,
Right.
I'm from California. Why the hell would I do anything for you? Why would I alienate my district to
get out?
So, yeah.
Well, you know why, Brian? Because they bring some of that California money with them.
Hell yeah.
Well, sure. That's, that might be good for a weekend, but you're not going to come back next session. I mean, next term.
Yeah. No, I like that idea.
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
I
On a
should
on a
do-
on
I
a
should-
tangential idea, I read a really cool idea just to talk about the presidential debate really quick since we didn't. I read somebody say that we need a new law that there is a requirement on every presidential ballot or every major ballot that there's a none of the above option. And if a majority pick that, they have to scuff the election and start over with new candidates.
Just don't know if that would happen ever.
Well, it won't. It wouldn't, because the two-party system is like, well, then our guy might not make it in, right? Like,
Right? Yeah.
but like in this current election cycle, it'd be a really interesting to see who's leading in the polls, right? The R, the D, or the C, none of the above.
What is it? Brewster's Millions? Monty Brewster. I voted none of the above. Hey, good job. Even though he was running.
I don't think I've seen that since the 80s.
Well, it's.
I've been meaning to watch it.
I don't know if it holds up, but I would like to think that it does.
That's
I
a
just
good question.
Whenever I think of that, I'm always like, did he spend it all? Did he get the money in the end? I know he bought an iceberg.
It came down to the very end, and there was something sketchy that happened. That's all I remember. There was a twist.
But he learned a valuable lesson, and everyone was better for it.
Everyone.
It's how these things always go. Yeah. So
I think that's it, boys.
yeah.
All right. So, if you have any questions or any topics you'd like us to discuss, then you need to email us, or I would like you to email us at mounthermeneutics@gmail.com. And just put in your
Yeah,
put in your,
and
your
something I
topic.
was thinking about, guys, to the listeners, anybody who's thinking about writing in a question or a topic, if we've been asking for this for a couple of weeks now, it occurs to me that someone may have a question that they want asked, but they're kind of, I don't want to say embarrassed, but they really don't want their name tied to it. We won't read the person's name unless you tell us you want us to. So maybe you've got a personal question, maybe you're struggling with addiction, divorce, infidelity. There's something going on in your personal life and you're wanting to talk about it. We're not going to say, hey, by the way, Tom, he's an idiot. He's got this going on in his life and he asked us this question. We're not going to dime you out like that. So if you want a topic and you want to just tell us, hey, keep my name out of it. You don't got to go Will Smith on us, but we'll keep your name out of our mouths.
Cool. You can catch me, Super Dre, Instagram, DM me.
Much like Dre, I've had a 0 DMs on Twitter. Not a single person has ever messaged me. Do y'all hate us?
I know we're approachable. I mean,
I get DMs all the time.
Well,
All the time.
I mean, you're single. You should.
Yeah, I hope so.
That's not true. I mean, I am single. But
And probably on the air, if I did
I
get
get-
DMs, I probably wouldn't. I would still say I get no DMs. I don't know.
Yeah.
Mount Hermeneutics. All right. So thanks for tuning in.
Happy
And I'll
Independence
say-
Day, America.
For
America.
sure. And I'll say stay curious and stay, what else do we say?
Stay enlightened.
Enlightened. That's right. So with that, we'll see you next week. God bless.